President Donald Trump not happy with Steve Bannon. Bannon possibly going after Donald Jr. Hey, everybody, I'm Chad Hasty, host of the Chad Hasty Show, which airs weekday mornings, 8:30 to 11 a.m. Central Time on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. Well, it's was quite a day on the third day of January, the third day of the year, as a book that's coming out, according to the UK Guardian, this book that's coming out, Fire and Fury Inside the Trump White House. Steve Bannon, who was the chief strategist for President Trump for a while. Now Steve Bannon back with Breitbart News as the chairman of Breitbart News. Steve Bannon talking to at least this author of the book. Well, the book was, or portions of the book were leaked to The Guardian. And in it, Bannon goes after Donald Jr., and that's probably not a wise idea. He said, even if you thought this, and this was talking about the meeting that allegedly happened inside Trump Tower between Don Jr. and a Russian attorney. Here's what the UK Guardian says. About Steve Bannon. He is particularly scathing about a June 2016 meeting involving Trump's son, Donald Jr., along with son-in-law Jared Kushner, and then campaign chairman Paul Manafort, with a Russian attorney at Trump Tower in New York. A trusted intermediary had promised documents that would incriminate Hillary Clinton. But instead of alerting the FBI to a potential assault on American democracy by a foreign power, Trump Jr. reportedly replied in the email, quote, "I love it." The meeting was revealed by the New York Times in July last year, prompting Trump Jr. to say no consequential material was actually produced. Soon after, Wolf wrote, Bannon remarked mockingly, the three senior guys in the campaign thought it was a good idea to meet with a foreign government inside Trump Tower in the conference room on the 25th floor with no lawyers. He said, even if you didn't thought this was not treasonous or unpatriotic or bad shit, I happen to think it's all of that. You should have called the FBI immediately. Bannon went off, Wolf writes, to say that if any such meeting had to take place, it should have been set up, quote, in a Holiday Inn in Manchester, New Hampshire, with your lawyers to meet up with these people. Any information, he said, could then be dumped down to Breitbart or something like that, or maybe some other more legitimate publication. Bannon added, you never see it, you never know it because you don't need to, but that's the brain trust that they had. Bannon also speculated that Trump Jr. involved in his father in the meeting. The chance that Don Jr. did not walk into these jumbos with his father's office on the 26th floor is zero. Well, that led to a press release on Wednesday from the president in which he went after Steve Bannon big time. And here's what the president had to say about Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon has nothing to do with me or my presidency. When he was fired, he not only lost his job, he lost his mind. Ouch. Steve was a staffer who worked for me after I'd already won the nomination by defeating 17 candidates, often described as the most talented field ever assembled in the Republican Party. Now that he is on his own, Steve is learning that winning isn't as easy as I make it look. Steve had very little to do with our historic victory, which was delivered by the forgotten men and women in our country, yet Steve had everything to do with the loss of a Senate seat in Alabama held for more than 30 years by Republicans. Steve doesn't represent my base. He's in it only for himself. Ouch. Steve pretends to be at war with the media, which he calls the opposition party, yet he spent his time at the White House leaking false information to the media to make himself seem far more important than he was. That's huge. It is the only thing he does well. Steve was rarely in a one-on-one meeting with me and only pretends to have had influence to fool a few people with no access and no clue, whom he helped write phony books. We have a great Republican members of Congress and candidates who are very supportive of the Make America Great Again agenda. Like me, they love the United States of America and are helping to finally take our country back and build it up rather than simply seeking to burn it down. That from President Trump. Folks, this is huge. It really is, because you had Steve Bannon, who in Breitbart News which were fully 100% behind Donald Trump. Now you have Trump breaking away from Steve Bannon after Steve Bannon reportedly went after Trump's son and Trump's family, including Jared Kushner. And now you have open warfare maybe between these two. It'll be interesting to see what happens over at Breitbart. Does Breitbart side with Steve Bannon or do they side with Donald Trump? Drudge Report. Matt Drudge sent out a tweet on Wednesday morning calling Steve Bannon a schizophrenic. I mean, this is a very interesting thing to watch. This is rarely do you see, someone who is involved in the inner circle go after the president of the United States. And really, you haven't seen a president unload on someone like a Steve Bannon, what was trusted advisor, now someone who is completely out of the circle. Steve Bannon looks like he's burned down the bridges. Will Steve Bannon run for president in 2020? Will he try to challenge Donald Trump? Will Steve Bannon come out with more stories against Donald Trump? It'll be something interesting to watch, something that a lot of people will be paying attention to, because Steve Bannon probably knows a lot more about what's going on in the Trump White House than Donald Trump wants you to believe. At the same time, Donald Trump is president of the United States, and he can come out at any time and rip apart Steve Bannon. And guess what? The folks who supported Steve Bannon at Breitbart, they still love Donald Trump. So they're more likely to side with Donald Trump. It's interesting the entire way around, and we are just a few days into the new year. Tune in to the Chad Hasty Show weekday mornings, 8:30 to 11 a.m. Central Time. News Talk, 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. We'll catch you later.